Okay, so I've got a bit of an explanation video today. Recently picked up a new synth, which is from the 1970s actually. It's a Yamaha CS5. Well, you know, it's not the best synth in the world or anything, but it is pretty cool. And I wanted to use it with my Korg SQ-1 sequencer. Um, Now I've figured out the best way to get it to work. Searching online, there does seem to be some confusion about the best way to get the SQ-1 working with the Yamaha CS series in general. So I thought I'd do a quick video to show you what I've figured out. So here is the CS5. So what I'm going to do is start by tuning it. So I've got this Boss guitar tuner here. I'm going to show you the easiest way to tune it. So I'm going to press the lowest C, which you can hear now. It stops, which is a bit annoying for tuning. So what you want to do is, instead of having envelope depth on the VCA, you want to turn that down and put initial level on 4, and then you can hear it very nicely. It's just continuing to play that low note. So I can adjust the tuning on the Boss. There we go. And we can check some other notes just to make sure that the linearity is good. Yeah, it's a bit different there, but basically it is in tune. So I'll stop that there, put the envelope back, and now you can that's working well. So what we want to do now is to get it working with the SQ-1, which is here. So this is what I have figured out. On the back of the synth, you have these inputs and outputs. Let me just clear this. Now, here is the control voltage. What I will do is to connect the control voltage out from the SQ1 into the control voltage in on this Yamaha. Now that is this orange cable. So that's pretty straightforward and pretty obvious. So the next thing we want to do is the trigger. Now you might think, oh well, I'll just use the trigger input, but it turns out that the Yamaha CS series has a slightly different voltages for the trigger input than Korg synths, even though they may appear to use the same standard. So what you want to do is use the external in instead of the trigger in. Great. Now we'll have a look on the SQ-1. So I'm going to switch it. It's not quite in focus, but I think you'll get the point. So what I'm going to do is switch the SQ-1 on and show you the settings. So you hold down play and stop and turn it on. Right, great. So you can see here it is on MIDI channel 1. And what you want to do is make sure that this mode light is lit, because that indicates that it is using positive polarity for the gate signal. When you press this button again, it will exit from the setup mode. This control here, if you read the SQ-1 manual, it says how long each step is, so I know it has to be on that setting. Okay, great. Now I do have a sequence plugged in, but before I start it playing, there's another setting. So you hold down the function button here, and you need to make sure that it's set to 8 volts hertz by volt, which is this one here. Okay, now at this point we can start to play the sequence, and it won't be quite right, but you'll hear it is nearly right. I'll switch to this so it plays the full 16 steps. Not playing anything. So what you want to do is turn this duty knob all the way to the left, so it's on the minimum duty, and then you can go to your CS, to the external trigger input here, and just turn that up, and now it's starting to trigger. I'll slow it down a bit. So what that is doing is setting the level that the external input has in order to trigger the synth. Let's do it again, and I'll show you what the effect of adjusting this trigger level is while it is playing. So basically, instead of this being your duty, that is now your duty. So because the Korg MS series and the Yamaha CS series, they both use hertz per volt tuning, and it did clearly sound like it was playing the scale properly. But they do have, although relatively speaking, notes are in the same place between Korg and Yamaha, the absolute position is different. So they have a different voltage for your lowest reference note, if you like. So the Korg SQ-1 is tuned to play scales in C, but at the moment the CS is definitely not playing anything in C, even though at the start of the video we did tune it to C. So we need to figure out what it is. Now here is the SQ-1. So what I want is for it to just play what it thinks is a C, and I don't want it to go through the rest of the sequence. So I'm going to go into active step, and I'm going to disable every single note except for the first one, which I do have set to a C. I'm going to start it playing. That's clearly triggering the synth. So I can adjust the tuning here on the boss. So when I think about adjusting tuning on the boss, at the moment what the SQ-1 thinks is a C is some kind of out of tune C sharp. So I can adjust the tuning here and get it to be in some other key. Okay, so that is the limit of the tuning adjustment. It's on the absolute minimum. So what that means is that when this is playing what it thinks is a C, the CS5 is tuned to an F. And this is one of the kind of incompatibility issues between the SQ-1 and the CS. So that isn't actually a very low note, even though this is playing the lowest thing it can. So it's a bit annoying to play bass lines with this combination. I'll activate all of the steps again and just hit play. It sounds good, and you can sequence the CS5 with the SQ-1, which is awesome. And you don't need any other bits of gear other than some patch leads. But let's say you want it to play deeper notes. That is why I have here this Kenton Pro Solo to show you that. Now, this here has a MIDI out, which is connected here into this adapter where I've got a 5-pin MIDI lead, which is going into the MIDI in on the Kenton Pro Solo. I'm going to switch that on now. Now I've got this Kenton set up to work really, really well with the Yamaha CS, and I will tell you the settings I use. But I'm going to repatch the outputs of the Korg into the outputs of the Kenton. And there's my CV, and there it is my gate. Now the Kenton properly supports the Yamaha CS, so this little thing we've done here at the back is no longer necessary. I'm going to move from the external in into the proper trigger input. So now when I press play, it will play in a lower register, but I need to worry about the tuning again. So I retuned this synth to be in F when this plays a C, but the Kenton will properly play the CS in its actual key. So I'm going to quickly retune the CS to be correct for the keyboard, and I'll just do exactly what I did at the start of the video. Okay, so I played a C there, just adjust the tuning. There we are. So let's watch what happens now when the SQ-1's playing MIDI into the Kenton, and that is then triggering the CS. Replug these back in and press play. Now we are clearly getting bass from this setup. Let me see if there is anything else I wanted to explain to you on my notes. Yes, the duty on the SQ-1 will now work. But there is one disadvantage to this, and that is the glide. So if I put a slide on one note, it doesn't actually glide between those two steps, even though the Pro Solo is supposed to support glide. And this is a problem that I've seen with the SQ-1 on MIDI. And actually, if you look online, you find that it's just the way it is. Sorry about the focusing here. Right, okay, good, we're in focus. But what you can do is kind of a hybrid solution. So you can have the Pro Solo manage the gate properly, and you can take the CV from the SQ-1 directly. So now if you play it, you can hear, although the tuning isn't as deep, it is properly doing the slide. You might wonder, how does it work with, if you just want to run everything from the Korg and not buy the Pro Solo, which is obviously the cheapest. How is that working with the gate length for each note? And the problem is, due to the voltage difference between the CS5 and the SQ-1, is it's really difficult to find a sweet spot setting the duty cycle and the trigger level to get that gate long enough to be able to hear the slide. So this is the best way I've found to, if you want slides in your sequence, to actually do it. Put the CV back in the Canton. And the last thing I wanted to show you was the settings that I have got in my Kenton. So coarse tune first is -8. Fine tune is -4. Scale is on -2. Got it set to hertz per volt. And the gate type is S trigger with a pull-up set. But I found that the CS5 works with S trigger with a pull-up or S trigger with no pull-up. Both of those work with the Kenton. Now your synth, depending on the way it's been tuned, might be different. So the best thing to do is use a guitar tuner in combination with your Pro Solo and set up those parameters for yourself. But those are the settings that I have got. So that is all that I wanted to show you. You can get the Korg SQ-1 working really well with your Yamaha CS synth. if you use the Pro Solo, you can get it to play low notes. But even if you don't have the Pro Solo, you can use the external input of the CS and sequence it really well from the Korg.